Okay, so we have been discussing all day about the issues of competitiveness from the point of view of different companies, those that do business model innovation, medium-sized entrepreneurs, startups, multinationals. But at the end of the day, we cannot spend the whole day talking without finishing up with an action list. So our final panel, which we call Reflections from Thought to Action, is going to help us look at what to do next from different perspectives. And to introduce the panel, I would like to bring forward my colleague and Executive Director of the European Competitiveness Initiative, Bruno Lanvin.
Thank you very much, Javier. So we're reaching the end of this exercise, and as Javier mentioned, we wanted to end with a reflection panel, which is not about reflection, it's about action. So we've heard a number of points of views, strategic indications about the roles that various types of players can play in reviving European competitiveness, small and medium-sized enterprises, startups, multinational companies. And now comes the time to ask, what are we going to do about it? And one message that came across very clearly from the previous panels is that this is not a job just for business leaders. It's not a job just for governments. It's not a job just for academia, business school, and universities. This is a job for all of us together. So to address this point, we have a panel which tries to bring together those three points of views. And I will introduce very briefly our panelists who are well known to all of you, starting on my immediate right by Thierry Breton, the CEO of Atos Origin and former Minister of Finance of France. Next to Thierry, Mr. Tamaki, who is the Deputy Secretary General of OECD. And last but not least, Peter Zemsky, who is our Interim Dean at INSEAD. So the idea is to hear from the business sector, from the governmental and intergovernmental public sector, and from academia, asking this first question: what are we ready to do together about reviving European competitiveness? So let me first give the floor to Thierry Breton.
Thank you, Bruno. And first of all, I would like to thank you for this initiative. I think it's absolutely critical. It is a good time to have this kind of discussion, because we all know, as European companies, we all know that on one hand, Europe is our home market, and on the other hand, we have tremendous opportunities, by the way, and I will come back on this very quickly. But on the other hand, we know also that we still are in the middle of the crisis. I'm not, and then I will hear what you have to say very carefully, but I'm still extremely keen on macroeconomics. And I think that we have a lot of challenges in front of us, and especially in Europe, in terms of convergence. So I like converging, and I like competitiveness, because this is, I think, absolutely the two key words. The first thing I would like to tell you is that as a European company, my company, Atos, that I share, is a European leader in IT services. And by the way, we should probably share our experience, because I have exactly the opposite problem of yours. My problem is that some of my young talents want to go to work abroad, and yours don't want to leave. So I don't know. Maybe there's something. Maybe there's something with the companies. And by the way, we are a global company, and they're all willing to work outside. So maybe we don't have the same people. But anyway, and also a second lesson, I would like to tell you that I teach to all my business leaders. As a European company, as a global company, we have to be citizens of the companies, of the countries where we work. We have to be humble. We never criticize any of the country where we operate. We are players. We are actors. We have to be good citizens, good European citizens, and respecting the countries and also the political strengths or weaknesses that we have in our country. This being said, I have decided to change the bylaws of my company and to become a European company. You know that in Europe, you can have this SE, Società Europeas. We have 800 SE in Europe. Atos was the largest French company to make this move. And in order to support your initiative, I've decided to create a club of this SE because I believe that it is much better to add and speak from a European point of view, including to the European regulators, to the European unions, than to speak in our different countries. And by the way, I think it is a fantastic way to help our governments to take the right decision in terms of convergence. And then, of course, we will need data, we will need some help, we need some support. And that's why, again, I'm here to testimony that we at Atos will support and endorse this initiative, which is absolutely critical to us. This being said, I strongly believe that, of course, as Mrs. Merkel said, these three magic numbers, 7, 25, and 50, 7% of the population in Europe, 25, representing 25% of the world GDP, but spending still at the European level 50% of the social resources. So, of course, we know what we have to do to converge and to change this mindset. We are in a fantastic world of opportunities. In the next 30 years, the world population will increase by 30%. That's absolutely fantastic. Europe, unfortunately, will not grow in terms of demographic like the rest of the planet, roughly flat in the next 30 years. So, of course, our goal as European companies is to attract the best talent in Europe. And that's why we need competitiveness. We need, again, to welcome non-European newcomers in Europe and in our company. That's absolutely vital. Let me tell you one of the stories. Before I left the government a few years ago, one of my last visits was in China. I had many visits in China, of course. And our ambassador from France, in China, came to see me because he was just hired to be the new ambassador from France in Beijing. And he told me, Mr. Minister, how will you measure that I will be a good or bad ambassador? And I say to him, I will give you only one KPI, one indicator. I will reflect your ability to send in France the highest number of Chinese students. That's it. And if you give me 50,000 students a year, by the way, some of them will come to INSEAD, I'm sure, you will be a great ambassador and you will work for your country and you will work for Europe. So here again, and that's the last point I would like to tell you, in this new world, when the population will increase tremendously, we need to take this part of immigration. We need to have a green card, sort of a green card, for at the Europe level. That's absolutely critical. I know it's not very fashionable what I'm saying. I know it should be controversial, but that's my deepest conviction, that in Europe, where you have 90% debt versus GDP, we all know that this will have an impact on the potential growth of Europe. And in order to cope with this, competitiveness, structural reforms, but also attracting new talent, and by the way, immigration. So, selected immigration, but immigration. So again here, thank you for this initiative. We will use it. It's absolutely critical for our businesses. And us, the 800 SE, Società Europeas, European companies, with these specific bylaws, because we feel that our nationality is Europe, we will work with you.
Thank you very much. And thank you first for this vibrant support for INSEAD's European Competitiveness Initiative, and also for bringing us to the field of talent globally and openness. OECD has been working very much along similar lines since its creation, about guaranteeing that the most developed economies in the world were open, were cooperating. What is your take, Tamaki-san, on the importance of European competitiveness in that context?
Yeah, thank you, Bruno. I'd like to extend out the warmest welcome to the OECD. I hope you know OECD quite well, but OECD is just a policy advising institution, not providing any money to anyone. Our relevance, our competitiveness depends upon our relevance and also the impact of our activities upon the government policies. Our clients are government officials, policymakers in 34 member countries plus partner countries. So OECD is not anymore the rich man's club or closed society of advanced economies. Saying so, I welcome this event as I'd like to first of all address the, emphasize is a challenge before us. It's not just to restore the competitiveness of Europe, but also across Europe as competitiveness trends within Europe diverge significantly. So the title, Europe Converging on Competitiveness, this is a quite relevant one. Then moving those thoughts to action, my role is perhaps to summarize the policy recommendation that OECD is giving to member countries to enhance competitiveness. It is on a quite long list, but I summarize into 3-4 minutes. First one is, of course, on better functioning of labor markets. You may be familiar with with it. But tackling labor cost and participation in the labor market is a priority for restoring competitiveness. In terms of concrete steps to do so, our experience at the OECD suggests decentralized wage bargaining. Decentralized wage bargaining can help wages better reflect productivity gains. Another approach to tackle labor costs is to reduce the high tax wedge that many European countries maintain on labor incomes. I strongly suggest to increase the burden on environmental cost, raise environmental taxes, and use those receipts to reduce the labor, wage, high, tax wages on labor income. Also, labor market policies in many European countries must also reduce the strong inequality between strict protection for workers on permanent contracts and precarious, very unstable temporary employments. The recent, our employment economics suggests the recent legislation in Europe is now moving towards the reducing the gap between the protection of permanent workers and temporary workers. The second point is, of course, innovation, knowledge-based capital. The innovation challenge is particularly urgent in the southern European countries, particularly in terms of promoting the knowledge economy and knowledge-based assets, such as software, patents, copyright, design, trademarks, and organizational capital. European countries still invest less in these assets than, for example, the US, where in the US, investment in knowledge-based assets now exceeds investment in physical capital. Investing in human capital and developing the relevant skill through quality education and training system is always the cornerstone of effectiveness, competitiveness. In particular, now more than ever, Europe needs to protect and exploit its strong science base. This means giving more autonomy to higher education institutions and injecting some competition that they are previously protected from to enable them to remain world-class. Third item is entrepreneurship. Of course, you are expert on this. But despite some progress, still difficult to grow in a firm in Europe due to regulatory uncertainties and barriers and lack of financing and risk capital. Europe should celebrate its entrepreneurial success stories and build a culture that supports entrepreneurs. Particularly, it is key to improve the condition for new firms less than 5 years old, as they account for up to 60% of job creation in some OECD countries. And these are the firms, like internet-based firms, that have continued to create jobs during the crisis. The last recommendation is to benefit from globalization by completing the European single market and strengthening competition in product market. While Europe continues to benefit from global value chains, Europe as a whole has become less competitive, losing market share in global markets to emerging countries that are moving up the value chain into segments traditionally dominated by European firms. This January, OECD and WTO issued a new database on trading value. The trade is measured not by gross basis, on a gross basis, but on a value-added basis, which we say it has begun to revolutionize our understanding of what is happening in the global trade, investment, and production, global value chains. Our work shows that much of the exports of European countries rely on imports from abroad. For example, in Hungary, nearly 2,000 of all intermediate imports are destinated for the export market. Europe must therefore remain open to the cross-border movements of trade, investment, knowledge, and citizens even, from EU and non-member countries, which is crucial source of imports, competition and knowledge that underpin competitiveness in Europe. So now we started to understand imports is indispensable for exports. Eastern European countries, for example, have showed considerable large export market gains than other European countries, reflecting the opening up of these economies combined with a business-friendly environment, low-cost levels, and large incoming FDI. Our work also shows the service sector contributes over 50% of total export in countries like France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom, when the value added by service in the production of goods is accounted for, as opposed to less than 1/4 of total trade when measured on a gross basis. Even so, productivity in service in many EU countries continue to lag. Completing the European single markets and increasing competition in national product markets, such as retail, will boost service growth, foster job creation, and enable European firms to reach the scale necessary to compete in the global market.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tamaki. Thank you for flagging those 3 key items of the necessity to look at the functioning of labor markets, clearly, the importance of convergence as an angle to reduce inequalities, including inequalities in productivity and competitiveness, and also bringing our attention to the importance, as Thierry Breton did before, of openness. If in the same way you want to attract talent and Chinese students to Europe, those countries which have been indeed the most competitive have happened to be the most open in Europe lately. You also put an accent on the role of higher education, so that gives me a direct segue to Peter.
Very good. Thank you very much. Clearly, the higher education sector is critical for a society's long-term competitiveness. One of the challenges, though, and the frustrations, it's a sector that moves quite slowly, and its impact happens over a long period of time. So in answer to the earlier question about short versus long run, whenever you're talking about, especially higher education, you're talking about the long term, which one of the reasons why INSEAD has decided to invest in European competitiveness is perhaps, unfortunately, we don't think this issue is going away in the short run. And so we share some of what Thierry has said. Reflecting on how the overall sector, what we need from our educational institutions, I think there are 2 big things. One is one of the themes of the conference was mentality and the need to shift mentality in Europe. And clearly, one of the big things you get out of your education sector It's half about skills, but the other half is about mentality. And in fact, we know that, you know, some of the core things you talked about, entrepreneurship, innovation, we know how to create environments where young people especially can get excited about that. And obviously it happens in business schools a lot, but actually if you look at what happens in many universities, is those capabilities start to get used across the school. That is, you can take, we do this, we take scientists from Paris and run them through some of our boot camps for MBAs, and they love it. So there is, I think, a real opportunity potentially to take universities and use them over time. It's not going to be quick, but to start shifting the mentality of some of the young people to be more entrepreneurial, more innovation focused. Business schools can be a part of it like INSEAD, but we have to get the message out not just to the business students. The second half, of course, of universities is actually creating hard skills. And you know, one of the things that worries me out of some of the stuff that Javier and the survey is that one of the things I think that's kept Europe afloat is the quality of the education system traditionally. And there is one of the things that brings in the multinationals and makes for successful Mittelstand and successful startups is the quality of the workforce. And the thing that worried me, relative to my company, I come from the US, where we basically have to import talent for the most part. One of the things that worried me in the survey, and I sense that, is the competitiveness of European schools is seen as going down. And I just take one lesson from the US. One thing that happened in the US in the 70s, why our education system, I think, got so bad, is a lot of the multinationals realized if you were IBM, you didn't actually have to worry anymore about the quality of New York State schools. You could source talent globally. And business really checked out from local school districts. And that was a big blow in the US. Europe, I mean, if business leaders, you're thinking about some ways to have an impact, I think we've got to keep the education system agile. We've got to make sure those 700,000 ICT jobs that aren't getting filled, why is that? How can we get the education system to match the talents? Just on INSEAD, I would say there's lots that we need to do as a school to contribute in terms of understanding. I hope you see some of the kind of studies we're doing, the interviews, the surveys, really important. We'll be moving this into our education, so we need to go out and write even more cases on successful European companies and take the lessons out. But the last of the part I'll just end with, I think one way we can contribute, given our history and our heritage, is by being a platform. As the speaker from Google reminded us, platforms are so much in this world. Having effective platforms are really important. And on this issue, I think there's a need to bring together the education sector, the business leaders, especially those who are willing to engage on Europe. And I think we have now a tremendous possibility with our alumni network to tap into that and do that with them. And really, we need a much stronger voice in European debates from the business community, really making the case about that we can grow our way out of this if we focus on productivity and growth. We don't have to fight all the time about how we split up the money. We can actually make progress. And I would be great if we could partner with many people and build that platform. Bruno?
Thank you very much, Peter. Now that we've heard from the three constituencies, business, government side, machinery, and academia, and since we have to wrap up in 5 minutes, I would like to turn, and apologies to the audience, we won't have the possibility to entertain questions from the audience. So on our collective behalf, I will now turn back to our three panelists and ask them, if we had one reason today to be optimistic about Europe, what should it be? What should we cultivate to maintain, reanimate, or grow enthusiasm in Europe and outside Europe about the future of Europe? Mr. Tamaki, you have a global view on this.
Say one of the evidence of this optimism is this workshop. they are discussing about competitiveness quite seriously. Of course, and I say, I discussed this morning with an Asian friends about the recovery process of Europe from the crisis as compared to the more quick recovery from the Asian crisis in most Asian countries. Why we are discussing why we are so slow in recovering from the crisis. It took only 1.5 years in most of Asian countries, let's say, suffered from a very serious downturn of economic activities in 97, 98. Of course, it is quite halfway measures which has taken by the governments. See, this is a very difficult process for European countries, let's say, as a collective body of 70 countries and single currency. Those institutional framework makes it more difficult. But say, looking at finding the private sector before us, it is, say, quite evident that Europe could emerge again quite soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for reminding us of the cycles. And indeed, we started this meeting hearing from Claude Janssen of the move made by INSEAD to go to Singapore, which was at the time where Asia was going to its deepest crisis. So we've seen cycles and we've seen growth resuming. So that may be an indication that wherever INSEAD goes, recovery takes place. Is that the reason we should be optimistic, Peter?
Yes, one thing that strikes me as I move around the world and see INSEAD alums, many of whom are Europeans outside of Europe, is Europe has done just phenomenally in terms of spreading its people around the world. And I think that once people get outside of Europe, they start to realize what makes it special. And I do think as the continent is now under attack, and I do think a crisis is helpful, you're starting to see Europeans pull together, and there's a desire to move things forward. And there's a lot of issues that have been festering and that now are going to need to be taken on. And so that makes me more optimistic going forward.
Okay, so the challenge may trigger energy and convergence in addressing the difficulties. And the last word from Thierry.
Why only one reason? Okay. I have plenty of reasons. Let me give you some of them. The first one, yes, it's true. It is not easy to be a European CEO. I've been CEO in many countries, including non-Europe. And I can tell you that when you have been a CEO in Europe, you can deal with a lot of adversities. And believe me, we are building the best CEO in the world because of our adverse situation. So that's the first reason I'm extremely optimistic. And by the way, this is why we need a very strong INSEAD in Europe, because this is where we build and design the mindset of the global leaders of tomorrow. And Europe is a very good school to be and to start. Let's be a little bit more serious, even if I am very serious. We have here, on this continent, the largest amount of capital, of equity. This is the first market. And guess what? Like for a company, we have a lot of things to do to be even more competitive. So when you go on the market, when you make an IPO, and you are already fully valued, the market don't buy it. For us, we still have a lot of things to do ahead of us. And for me, I see this as an opportunity. Because yes, guess what? By the door, by the window, we will do it. Because we have demonstrated, since World War II, that after a tragedy, we have been able to find the way to rebuild this continent and the world together. So of course, it takes time. Of course, it's challenging. Of course, it's bumpy. But look, 2 years ago, everybody was speaking about the end of the euro. Today, I don't hear this. Maybe tomorrow I will hear it again. But at least today, I don't hear this. So it means that, yes, together, it takes maybe some time, but we find the way. And the third reason, we have fantastic young people and my problem is to keep them in Europe. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for all our panelists. And let me hand the floor back to Javier for closing the event.
Okay, so we started our conference this afternoon on the theme of converging on competitiveness. And it is clear that, what we have seen throughout the day is that, in fact, there is the convergence on the theme of competitiveness as a uniting flag to create a sense of energy, to motivate different stakeholders to take action in the current situation. We have also seen how different type of companies and policies can help in terms of converging into a high level of competitiveness, particularly unshackling the entrepreneurs to create new companies, providing the infrastructure for the medium-sized companies to grow and become competitive, and to open the market more to multinationals that are able to spread the best global practices across Europe. So first of all, I want to wrap up thanking the many people involved on this, certainly the speakers that are currently present, Mr. Breton, Tamaki, and Zemsky, Bruno Lanvin as moderator. I also want to thank all of the speakers, the facilitators and faculty that have been involved on the previous panels. All of you for staying all the way to the end. I know that there are many wonderful things to do on a Friday afternoon in Paris, as well as those of you who are on the internet and watching online. So thanks for staying with us. Very, very important thank you to our sponsors, and particularly to the OECD for allowing us to have these facilities. And finally, having been involved on this conference from the beginning, I've been amazed by how much work it takes to pull together an event like this. So I would like to have all of the people who have been involved on the organizing team to please stand up and receive a round of applause for the great work that they have done on this. Just one quick word about the European Competitiveness Initiative. As academic director of the initiative, I feel that this is a great opportunity for the school to engage with the alumni who feel passionate about the situation in Europe, engage with the business community, provide a voice for business, engage with policymakers to understand and provide insights on policy issues that they are analyzing. So I hope that if you are interested in this topic, if you feel that Europe needs to move and needs to do things, I hope that you see this initiative as a platform for you to be engaged. I encourage you to visit our website, to visit the material that we have there. We really have a lot of faculty actively involved on this, and it would be great to engage with you.